Welcome to Occult of Personality, Esoteric Podcast Extraordinaire. I'm your host, Greg Kaminsky, and you can find Occult of Personality Podcast at occultofpersonality.net and on iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher Radio, and all the best podcast apps. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter and Facebook to get the latest updates on new episodes and more. This episode features an interview with Robert Sullivan, author of Cinema Symbolism, a guide to esoteric imagery in popular movies. I'd like to remind you that although you're able to listen to this podcast at no charge, the costs for me to bring it to you are significant. In order to ensure that the free Occult of Personality podcast continues, I need your financial support now more than ever. If you're willing, consider supporting Occult of Personality by joining the membership section or donating via the donate button on the occultofpersonality.net website or via Patreon at patreon.com/occultofpersonality. If you find these interviews interesting, informative, inspiring, and thought-provoking, please commit to helping me continue bringing you this podcast. And if you're already supporting the show or have done so in the past, my heartfelt thanks, and I salute you. Occult of Personality podcast is also sponsored by Miskatonic Books, an online store that focuses on the esoteric, occult, ceremonial magic, Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, witchcraft, the Golden Dawn, as well as dark fantasy, classic horror, and supernatural fiction. They carry books by all your favorite esoteric publishers as well. Just visit miskatonicbooks.com. Temple of Thelema is a true outer order of the greater mysteries, providing ceremonial initiation, structured training, and regular group work, all in conformity with the principles of the Book of the Law. An investment of time, effort, and commitment is expected from each member. Each is expected to aspire fervently to the great work, to dare, with courage undaunted, to perfect that work, and ever to apply his or her best effort to effect harmony within the order and within the world in general. Founded in service to the AA, College of Thelema seeks to guide the student to an understanding of the law of Thelema. Most especially, this means a deeper understanding of oneself and of one's true will. A combination of instruction techniques is employed, including seminars, written texts, and individual work. For over 40 years, College of Thelema has published journals in the Continuum and Black Pearl, as well as several books on occult subjects maintaining high standards in Thelemic education. Visit Temple of Thelema at www.thelema.org. Now, in episode number 167, our guest is Robert W. Sullivan IV, the author of Cinema Symbolism, a guide to esoteric imagery in popular movies. You can find his website at robertwsullivanIV.com. Sullivan appeared previously on the show in episode 146 to talk about his first book, The Royal Arch of Enoch. Robert W. Sullivan IV is a philosopher, historian, antiquarian, jurist, theologian, writer, and lawyer. Mr. Sullivan is a Master Mason and 32nd degree Scottish Rite Mason. The Royal Arch of Enoch, The Impact of Masonic Ritual, Philosophy, and Symbolism was published in 2012 and is his first book. In 2014, Sullivan published his second book, the subject of our conversation this evening, Cinema Symbolism, a guide to esoteric imagery in popular movies, which is about occult, numerological, astrological, mythological, alchemical, tarot, and kabbalistic iconography and symbolism contained within popular movies. Films analyzed in the book include The Exorcist, Back to the Future, Star Wars, The Lord of the Rings, The Wizard of Oz, Black Swan, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, the James Bond movies, The Matrix, and many others. Robert Sullivan's Cinema Symbolism is a tour de force through modern film, exploring the esoteric symbolism encoded within. I appreciate the insight, expertise, and thorough nature of his analysis. The symbolic ideas explored by the book are serious subjects, but it's still very readable and enjoyable at the same time. I also appreciated the authority that Sullivan brings to the subject. Based only on his previous book, The Royal Arch of Enoch, Sullivan is not only highly qualified on the subject of esoteric symbolism, philosophy, religion, and history, but his personal experience with Freemasonry and cinema makes his writings on the subject far superior to all other analysis of popular entertainment that I've ever read. If you enjoy movies and want to know about the esoteric symbolism some of them convey, this is a must-read. Brother Robert Sullivan, I want to welcome you back to A Cult of Personality podcast. It's always good to speak with you.
Hi, Brother Greg. It's great to return. Pleasure to be here, of course. Second appearance. I'm very much looking forward to talking a little cinema symbolism, and thank you for having me on. It's much appreciated.
Before we talk about cinema symbolism, I just want to say, well, number one, I think, most listeners remember you from your previous appearance discussing your book, The Royal Arch of Enoch. And now we're talking cinema symbolism. And before we get into it, you've disclosed some lesser-known information, shall we say, about the Masonic tradition and prior influential traditions to that. And now you're exposing the secrets of cinema, of film symbolism. And I'm just wondering, have you encountered any difficulties, resistance to your work, threats, any kind of, anything of that sort?
No, not really. Most of the response, I'll be honest with you, most of the reaction has been positive. With the Masonic book, which is the first book, that has been pretty well received. I have lectured on it. I've been invited to Masonic lodges to speak on it. I was up actually in your neck of the woods about a little over a year and a half ago in Rhode Island, lecturing on the Royal Arch to an assembly of York Rite Masons. Masons from Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Actually, the Grand Master, I believe, of the state of Massachusetts was in attendance during the lecture as well. So no, the Royal Arch has been met with pretty well. Has been pretty well received. I have some pending invitations out west, which I'm currently looking into to speak to Masonic lodges in Denver, Colorado, and California, and also in Portland, Oregon. But that's pending right now. To be honest, there has been a few Masons who have not liked it. This is to be expected. I knew going into this there was never going to be unanimous liking across the board. But by and large, the reaction has been very positive. I was glad the reaction, by and large, was positive within Freemasonry with other Masons. But of course, there is always people who don't like it and don't like your work and have something negative to say. But this comes with the territory. And somewhat, at this point in time, to be completely honest with you, Brother Craig, I'm somewhat bulletproof to this at this point in time.
Well, that's good. The reason I asked the question is, listeners may recall Controversy, a blogger and podcaster who was met with an untimely end, shall we say. He was actually working on a book on this very same subject of cinema symbolism, when he passed. So I know it's a subject that seems on the surface to be, very, what would I say, kind of vanilla, like it's not dangerous, but
it is really.
Exactly.
Who was the podcaster? I don't know this one.
Controversy.
No, I've never heard of him. I'm sorry.
Daniel Benkowski. I think his website was controversypapers.blogspot.com, and that was about 2008, I think, that he passed away. But he was in the midst of actually working on a book about this subject, and he never finished it.
Yeah, no, I never heard of this person until you brought it up. But by and large, with the Cinema Symbolism book, I mean, you're right. It's not innocuous. It's not innocuous at all. I mean, it's very deep waters actually. But with Cinema Symbolism, I have not received any sort of death threats or anything like that. Nothing so far, at any rate.
Oh, that's good to hear. I'm not trying to, create any controversy where there is none, but just curious about it because, maybe you could just talk a little bit about, you said, the subject is kind of deep waters and maybe it doesn't seem so at first.
Yeah, absolutely. What got me started on all this, and I know we did a Royal Arch show, so I'm not going to belabor this point, but if you're familiar with the first book, the concluding chapter dealt with Masonic sort of solar Enochian symbolism in popular movies. One of the big tip-off movies to this was the first National Treasure movie, which this is in the Royal Arch book, which is essentially the retelling of this Royal Arch Masonic ritual. There it is on the big screen. The discovery of the subterranean treasure vault of the Masons and the Templars beneath the Holy Ground. There it is. That's the ritual. That's the National Treasure movie. And this was always a subject that had fascinated me. I was familiar with Joseph Campbell and his influence upon Lucas with the monomyth and the Hero with a Thousand Faces book. I was seeing very heavy Gnostic overtones in movies like The Matrix. And this was just, when I was doing Royal Arch, this was just something that really fascinated me. And when I got done Royal Arch, I really, quite literally, the minute that Royal Arch came out, I just started writing Cinema Symbolism 2. This would have probably been early autumn of 2012, I want to say. And that came out, Cinema Symbolism was originally published, I want to say, in the summer of 2014. I'm actually writing its sequel right now, Cinema Symbolism 2. But it's deep water stuff. A lot of people... But the one thing there were a couple motivating for starters, the motivating factor was, I was seeing it. I was seeing it as plain as day. But the other thing was there was this sort of body of research that somewhat, and I don't really like to disparage or put down or anything like that when I do these shows. I'm much more interested in talking about my own work. But every time this subject matter came up, it was this idea of every time you see an eye in a triangle in a movie or even something that resembles this, this is evidence of this, overarching Masonic, Illuminati, occult, Luciferian agenda somehow or another. What it is, no one knows, but there's the eye in the triangle, so this must be some sort of Masonic MK Ultra mind control program. I never bought into that. I still don't buy into that. What I was finding with these movies was, just how adroit this material is concealed and conveyed both to your conscious and subconscious mind. I mean, you're really dealing with themes of Kabbalah, of astrology, of astrotheology, of archetypes. We're dealing with the collective unconscious. We're dealing, with archetypal imagery. We're dealing with numerology. We're dealing with comparative religion. We're